Come on, snap out of it. Neither of us will make it if you don't hang together.
I was once a man. A man.
This is your faceplate.
Was my mask. Just as I was once a man. I was a man. Yes. Oh, yes. I was a man. I was a man. I was a man. I was a man. I was a man.
Don't say another word or I'm gonna flush you like a turd.
I was a man.
I'm gonna kill your crack ass. You slithering mother mutated snake.
Howdy folks, I hope you're having a wonderful year so far. I've got an all new mold up for review. This is BB-71 Gale. This is 5.2 Toys' take on a king cobra. Today I'm going to talk about its package and included contents, this bonus item, and all the details about Gale. I'll demo its transformation into cube mode and then back to beast mode. I'll give Gale a box grade and then I'll offer some closing thoughts. Let's move some of this stuff out of the way and jump right in. I want to mention this real quick. Gale did come with this collectible metal pin. It has a pretty nice design, it's a sturdy chunk of metal and pretty decent quality. I didn't want to throw this in the mix for the review proper because I don't know how often 5.2 Toys might be included in this piece with regular retail shipments. So the pin is not included with the figure, but it's definitely nice to have. I also want to point out that this is the VIP version of Gale. What that means is this is a variant of the regular release that was produced specifically for VIP members. The difference being that this Gale has transparent body parts instead of opaque yellow-green parts, and it glows in the dark. Again, it's designated by the 2025 VIP sticker on the package. Let's talk about the package and its contents. It has really wicked looking artwork on the front. Gale is definitely poised to strike, and that's pretty awesome. It's also showing that it comes with collector cards, so that's a nice bonus. Since it's printed on the box instead of a sticker, I think it's a pretty safe bet that all versions of Gale will include cards. You got details about the figure on the side, and interestingly, it's showing other new releases. Moon Safari the Giraffe, that was released pretty recently, and what most people would call JoJo 2.0, which I guess is going to be called Neo Geo. That'll be coming out later this year. The back has nice artwork and some details on the figure here, designed by X2R, and this is interesting. It's showing the transformation difficulty as 3 out of 5 stars. I don't recall ever seeing this on any other Beastbox package, so that might be 5.2 Toys' way of classifying the complexity of their figures. Obviously, you wouldn't want to give one that's extremely difficult to transform to a kid as a gift or whatever, so I think that's a great idea. And I agree. I played around with Gale, and I think it'd rate right about in the middle as far as complexity. It's also showing that you can separate the hood and the back panel. I'm not sure if I want to do that since it looks like something that could break if you mishandle it. Though I assume that's the intended feature. You can make Gale look like it has quote-unquote wings or something like that. They're also detailing the head, the weapon, the tail, and it does have an additional mode. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on. At that, you get collector cards. You get all the catalog stuff and also instructions, and of course you get a box charger. Unfortunately, I think 5.2 Toys is phasing out the traditional style character card with bios on the back in favor of a collector style card. I just happen to like the lore the designers came up with for their creations, and it always gave me a little more insight into their thought process, so I'm missing that already. As far as the collector cards, we'll take a look at what I got. They're printed on a glossy stock with what appears to be a second gloss spot coat over the logo. It has a really nice effect. All cards have a lenticular effect on the front, and these look great. In this pack I got Gunpowder, I think this is a Ghost Dog, a Huracan, which is a 7cm Beastbox, a Delta, and following right up with its 2.0 counterpart, Sigma. These are nice. Moving on, let's talk about some figure details. First impressions, I have to say it took me a little while to get my head around this figure. It is a really beautiful sculpt, and for the most part, I'd say it's really well thought out. It has some incredibly nice detailing with an awesome looking head sculpt, serpentine eyes, and the shape of its mouth and jaw with these fangs and its little forked tongue. Coming around the top, you have these toe hook looking pieces, this hinge part, and of course the hood. There's some incredible detailing on it. This part is nicely contoured around the head. These transparent panels really show the internals, and 5.2 Toys spared nothing. I like the hexagonal king cobra pattern. Nano armor, nice graphic detailing. These pieces look like additional power cables, and if you look at the internals, these are metal pipes that might be liquid cooling or maybe fuel lines. Altogether, it's a very cool effect and gives this figure quite a bit more dimension. The color scheme is dark navy blue, some copper components along with its base green with white graphic highlights. The cable components are a pretty cool style element. Coming around the side, you've got keep clear and a chevron pattern here. More paint applications around the back, and the blue components have a bit of a flake paint effect. Coming around the tail, it has this claw on the tip. On this side, there's more paint applications, and this piece is built around a number of different components, including this transparent blue piece that might be a canister or something like that with a copper metal housing. This is all attached to the base plate, of course, so it's kind of like a sidecar cannon. It has a 3mm hole. I don't have anything handy right now, but you could plug something into it like a missile or a blast effect or something similar. It's definitely the type of figure that gives you room to use your imagination, including how it might scale with other figures you might own, which is a great space to be in, especially for a kid who's very likely going to take a figure like this and let their imagination run with how they play with it with their other figures. As an example, Gale might be an oversized cobra alongside a 7-inch action figure, or it might be a gigantic mech beast, sort of like a Zoid in a world of miniature figures. I don't know what this component on the back is supposed to be, but it kind of looks like a saddle. So you could have your little dude sitting up in there, and he actually fits in there really nicely. Just look out for that gigantic menacing claw. At any rate, on the surface you might think it's just a robot snake that just sort of sits there, but with the way it's built, it absolutely has play value. On to other figure details. As far as build quality, I think it's fairly well built, but I do have some concerns. Obviously, transparent plastic wears out much more easily than regular opaque plastic parts. I specifically want to call out this component. This piece is actually slightly separated. It's mostly holding on there by the mold of that part, but if it becomes brittle or loose, that damn thing is going to break. And since it's a main joint for this figure, the head is going to fall off and it'll be an unrepairable broken toy. I don't have a whole lot of confidence in this particular joint holding up over time, and my best guess is that a lot of these figures are going to wind up broken eventually. Also on the back, something you should be aware of is this tailpiece sliding component. The instructions show that you should slide it back and around until you hear a click. About in the middle, you can kind of feel it resisting and it does sort of snap, but there's nothing here to lock it in place. What I've found is, if you apply enough pressure, you could push it past the middle and slide it all the way around to the other side. I think I've already got stress marks from when I did that. My best advice is do not try to snap the tail into that position. I just get it roughly 180 degrees, about where you feel resistance, and leave it at that. So that's just another part that could be failing over time. Mechanical issues aside, another thing that I'd point out is glaring design choice. Obviously, a flat middle section with a sidecar cannon isn't the first thing that comes to mind when you think of the snake, but it does serve a couple of purposes. One, it provides stability so this thing can sit up, and two, it definitely makes this thing more of an action figure. 5.2 Toys might have been aware that this look would be controversial, so what they did is they cleverly treated this midsection as sort of a detachable armament. You can actually detach the snake from these joints and reattach them to get a more traditional snake appearance. Obviously, it's not nearly as stable as it is with the platform, but its weight distribution is good enough that you can get it into some decent poses. And maybe the midsection doubles as a gunboat for hexanoids. I don't know. For a serpentine creature, Gale has some pretty clever points of articulation. You have a movable jaw, but one thing I'll say is there's nothing to grab a hold of when it's closed, so you'll probably have to pry it open with a tiny instrument. It has nice looking fangs, the head can tilt up and down, there's a pivot joint on the hood, and the head can turn left and right about 45 degrees. It could turn further, but it's obstructed from a wider range of motion due to these ornamental cables. You got a joint here, a joint at that section, joints all over this thing. Altogether, Gale has pretty good range of articulation, like I said, so you can get this thing in some pretty cool poses. Of course, but wait, there's more situation here. Like I said before, this is a VIP version which glows in the dark, so let's check this out. We'll start with UV light. But then it also glows in the dark, and it glows really well. It's really reactive to UV light, so you just need to give it a quick zap and you've got yourself a deadly night predator. That's pretty damn cool. Let's move on to a transformation demo. Again, there are a couple of decorative pieces that are not part of the transformation, so they have to be removed. This rubbery fork tongue pops out of this groove and slot connection. Then you close the jaw. You'll open up this piece, fold the head end, and close it back up. Next, you'll detach these cables. They're just on a peg and pose connection. These pieces do not come off the figure, so just be aware that they retract up inside the hood. Once they're out, you'll take the lower hard plastic part and rotate them around. The flat piece will sit inside this groove. I found it easiest just to slide it straight up into the groove for a secure connection. You'll just need to make sure you push it all the way in. The cable component is the second piece that needs to be removed. Pop it off from the peg and these cables will slide straight out from the sides. Then just set it aside. Next, these tow hook looking pieces will need to rotate out. This will start to form a roughly square shape. From this joint, rotate the whole figure around 180 degrees. Then you're going to take the top part of the hood and rotate that 180 degrees. Then you're going to start folding up this figure. This flat piece will sit inside the base, fold it up, and push it in. This piece is going to come down directly on top of that. There's a tab connection that'll connect to that slot, so you'll pull it down and connect it. You want to make sure you have the saddle piece pushed up against the hood. Collapse the side cart cannon. It's another peg and pose connection. Obviously it slides back and forth on this rail, so you'll need to line it up. Collapse the upper half, then slide this whole piece forward until you hear a click. Then you'll lock it into the side. Working our way around to the other side to get at the tail, just hold this entire piece sideways so you have leverage to push it up until you hear a click. There again, it's another peg and pose connection. It'll slide right up in there. For the second joint, the way you want to turn it is to have this post turned out sideways and then this interior post pointed upwards. What you're going to do is rotate that 90 degrees, then position it to connect to that post. So you're basically following the contour to the side of the base. This little vent piece needs to be rotated to face downwards, so this post is on top. This hole is going to connect to that peg, so you'll fold it up and over and plug it in. From here, we'll make sure this piece is folded up. You've got a slot and tab connection here, so you'll turn the piece sideways like that, fold it down, and push them together. These pieces are going to wrap around this whole structure. This green panel should be on the outside, so we'll wrap it around like that. This particular ball socket is at an odd angle, but it also has a swivel joint right here. So you may have to do some wiggling to get it in the right position, and that's probably the best way I can describe it. So you basically just need to get it oriented so this piece is flat up against these other panels. And for that, you've got tab and slot connections. The contours really tell you how this cube form needs to come together, so you've definitely got some good hints to tell you how this thing needs to be manipulated. For the final part, we need to drop the lid. These slots are going to connect to these opposite tabs on each side. Fold it up and over, push it down, and then you can scrunch it up. It does form a pretty solid box. This is the first time I'm putting it in its box charger, and it fits in there real nice. But before we wrap up this section, I need to see how this thing looks in its box mode in the dark. That is freaking awesome. This thing looks incredible inside its box charger. I'm really digging this quite a bit. I did have one more thing I wanted to show off before I give Gale a box grade, and that's the bonus item. Before I jump into that though, I want to touch on the removable parts. I'm not finding a good location for them, but one thing I'll say about this particular box mode is there's a lot of gaps, so you do have room to cram things in there. You can actually get a minifig inside there with room to spare. So I guess you could put the tongue in there, and this cable will attach to this peg and pose connection, and you can tuck those cables away and connect it right there. So how will this fit inside of a box charger? Probably not very well, but I'm going to give it a shot. And well, it actually closes with that cable attached, so you at least have the option so you're less likely to lose it. You just need to be cognizant of where you put those parts so you don't damage them when you convert back to beast mode. At that, I'll reverse my tracks and do a quick reverse transformation demo. I'll pop it open from this joint. We'll pull it up and out of the way. You're going to rotate this piece up and out of the way. Rotate it around that hinge. Then you're going to pull these pieces out. We have the tongue here so we can get that out and set it aside. We'll also pull the cable out. From here, we'll separate these pieces from the sides. You're going to rotate this piece up 90 degrees. Then rotate this hinge 90 degrees. From here, we can detach the midsection below the hood. Just pop it up, pull it up and over. We'll rotate this piece around 180 degrees and rotate that hood 180 degrees. Then you can start forming the hood and the head. So we'll just rotate those two pieces back. Open up this cavity, then pull the head out, then close it back up. Now we'll attach the tongue. As far as the sidecar goes, you can push that back in whatever position you want. Bring up the upper section like so. Then bring this piece back in and around, and like I said before, I recommend not snapping it into place. I'd just get it up to about 180 degrees from the head and leave it at that. It's multi-jointed enough that you can really configure and pose this thing any way you want. Last thing is, we need to reattach the set of cables, and then you're good to go. Alright, let's take a look at this bonus item. It's another quarter-size cartridge style piece. If you get 4 with this shape and size, they're designed to fit 4 inside of a box charger. And just to demo that real quick, I've got a few handy here. We've got the recently released Snake Dio filler insert, this rocket launcher set for Commando, and this piece belongs to Omnitopty. They all have peg and pose connections on their corners, so you're just connecting their counterpoints one on top of the other. And they are not fitting in as neatly as I would have hoped. Putting them in sideways doesn't seem to make any difference. It's possible that I didn't have these compacted up exactly like they're supposed to. I don't know. I'm still getting a bit of a gap on the box charger lid. So anyway, there's something I probably need to examine more closely at another time. For now, I'd call this demo a failure. But let's move on to Gale's bonus item. It's a neat looking piece, pretty exotic looking. The gist of it is you've got 2 main components that need to split off from each other, so we're going to pull them apart. Then you're going to take this piece and split it apart. It's 2 separate pieces. Something to be aware of, this piece can pop out because it's attached by a ball socket. Of course, it's easy to reattach. Basically, just extend these pieces up and out. There's a peg that comes out, and it's in there pretty tight, so you may need a tiny tool to get it out. It's ambiguous enough of a design that you could actually rotate the pegs out in the opposite direction. Honestly, I think it's really up to your own preference. The instructions suggest having a hook piece pointed down. These little pieces kind of look like buzzsaws. They have nice paint detailing and matching flake paint to Gale's navy blue parts. It has a notch joint for a bit of a ratcheting effect. Quick sidebar, I didn't extend the cables from Gale's hood since these instructions for whatever reason show that they need to be retracted for the bonus weapons. One way or the other, I'm going to show this as close as I can to how I think 5.2 Toys intended these pieces to be configured. They're going to line up with the latch piece on the back of the hood. It really does fit the contour of Gale's neck pretty well. It has a turboprop looking mold, which I think lends itself to the name of the character pretty well. As far as these other pieces, it's completely ambiguous on where they should be plugged into. There are portholes all over this figure, so I think you get to pick your poison. One way or the other, there are definitely some options for mixing and matching. It's an interesting accessory, but to be honest, I think a major missed opportunity would have been playing up the design of the sidecar cannon with a blast effect, a missile, or something along those lines. As far as Gale on the whole, I think it's not so much a mechanized version of an animal as much as it is a battle platform. And the bonus items do seem to play off the mythology of a feathered serpent. Anyway, they're really nice looking pieces and pretty interesting, but I wouldn't say they're the best bonus items I've seen either. Now it's time to give Gale a box grade. This is my rating system of 6 categories with up to 5 points each for a total score of anything between 0 to 30 points. I think a snake has been one of the most requested additions to the Beastbox line for quite some time, and on this I feel like 5.2 Toys brought their A game. Gale has incredible detailing and styling, and while I don't know what other robotic snake toys might exist out there, this one is completely unique. It looks deadly and is overall an amazing piece. 5 out of 5. On the surface, it would seem that a snake has almost no play value as an action figure, but this is absolutely not the case for Gale. Tons of articulation and interesting gimmicks bring this to a score of 4 out of 5. Gale's transformation is mostly intuitive and not difficult at all. Plenty of connection joints, squared off edges, and interesting twists make it fun to manipulate, though I'm not a fan of having to remove parts that aren't actually part of the transformation. At all. 3 out of 5. Again, one would assume that as an action figure, a snake wouldn't have much going for it. But 5.2 Toys added plenty of clever joints that give this figure tons of posability, which also are part of its transformation. It's completely representative of a serpentine animal, and I think splitting the difference between adding a flat base for more stability and being able to disconnect it so you can give this figure a more pure snake form was a smart design decision. 5 out of 5. Gale is nicely built with no loose or janky parts, with 2 exceptions. What is supposed to be a locking mechanism for the tail and the main joint connecting the base to the neck. On mine, that piece isn't even joined at the seam on one side, and I have no confidence that it's not going to wear out eventually, and probably even with minimal handling. 2 out of 5. I really like Gale. The bonus item isn't the greatest, the sidecar / base component is a bit odd, but it has so much going for it as far as its articulation and styling that it's just fun to pick up, and that, to me, is the mark of a very well designed figure. 4 out of 5. And that brings the box grade total to 23 out of 30. So that's a wrap on my review for the Beastbox King Cobra BB-71 Gale. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you're still with me, please take a couple of seconds to leave a like, a comment, or share this on social. It helps out this channel tremendously. At any rate, there's still a ton of great stuff coming out this year from 5.2 Toys, and I have a lot more to review in the works, so I'll look forward to meeting again in the coming months. Have fun wherever you are, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Say it one more time, and I'll put my boot up your behind. I'm gonna kill your crack ass.
Once a man. Once a man. I was a man. I was a man. I was a man. Once a man.